All right, good morning.
Good morning, Siobhan.
Yeah, I'm really delighted to be here with you now this morning. We've got an interesting half hour of conversation to happen. I want to, chat to you and learn primarily from you all about, the complementarity between social enterprises and the circular economy. You guys are the experts. I'm really looking forward to this session. So before I get started, just to introduce the speakers and yourself. So Una Lavelle to my right, chairperson of the CRNI, Community Reuse Network Ireland, better get that right, and also the general manager of Recycle IT. Una, thanks for being with us.
It's the Community Resources Network.
Resources Network. My apologies.
We've gone through a name change, I think, since we were talking to you last, Siobhan.
A name change. Well, that's good. That in itself is circular. So thank you for that.
That's the whole reason.
Dr. Sarah Miller here, CEO of the Rediscovery Centre, which is where we are today. Thank you for hosting us. And then on my far left is Owen Ryan, who's the head of the social enterprise social enterprise sector, in Rethink Ireland. So thank you to you all for being here today.
Pleasure to be here.
No better place, absolutely no better place to host this discussion. I suppose the Rediscovery Centre is the National Circular Economy Centre of Ireland, and I love coming here. I love the idea of this space. I love the innovation, the creation, the sustainability. I leave here with more ideas. I feel I go home and I'm like, yes, brilliant. I need to look at things differently. So thank you to you and your team,
that's the plan.
Sarah, for this. So I suppose I do want to kind of start with you, Sarah, if that's okay. So, what is the circular economy? Let's bring it back to basics. What is that?
Yeah.
What is it? And I suppose through the mindset and the lens of the links between that and social enterprises.
Yeah. Well, I suppose taking it down to the very basic level, the circular economy is just another way of doing business better and living better, living more sustainably. If you think about the way we live at the moment, we call that the linear economy, and it's very much about taking resources, generally from the earth, virgin materials, processing those, manufacturing, making products, using them maybe for very short periods of time, a lot of the time only once, and then disposing of them. So, if you think about all the waste that's generated through that linear system, there's so much energy, so much water, there's so many resources that go into making products. And then at the end of the day, they're used for very short periods of time, and all of that value is lost because they're just simply put into landfill or incinerated. So what the circular economy is all about is trying to maximize the value in all of the materials that we have, trying to live within the boundaries of the planet, and trying to design out waste and design out any pollutants or toxins.
Brilliant.
That's what it is, really. And I suppose this in itself, the centre is very much a demonstration of what the circular economy could look like and how you can adopt circular economy principles, or how you can just basically contribute to a more sustainable economy.
It's brilliant. I mean, I think even the fact that this centre is a reused amenity, and I suppose it was the boiler house here in the heart of Ballymun. It played a central role, and it continues to do so now. I think that in itself is absolutely fantastic. So, the circular economy, I suppose, it's not something that's new.
No.
It's not something, in fact, and we were chatting earlier on before we kind of came in here, I suppose members of the traveller community would have played a significant role, and their culture would have been around that kind of circular economy, the reusing and repurposing of goods to extend their life, to really kind of not have that, disposable mindset. So can you, Owen, just tell me about, you mentioned you visited a social enterprise recently that is very much engaged in the circular economy.
Yeah, so we were chatting about Bounce Back Recycling in East Galway, who, to your point, had identified high unemployment amongst the traveller community, and identified a strength, as you say, in terms of the circular economy. They had strong ties, experience and expertise in taking something that might be going to landfill and making amazing use of it. For those that don't know Bounce Back Recycling, in essence, they are taking mattresses that are heading towards landfill, stripping them down, recycling the parts, and taking the profits, putting it back into the business. So as we know, a social enterprise is a business where they're primarily looking to solve a social issue, but what they do with the profit is what makes them so unique and amazing. In this instance, Bounce Back Recycling are taking those profits and funneling it back into employing traveller men and women, training traveller men and women if they're going on to further employment, and I suppose fundamentally trying to increase the number of mattresses. There's 600,000 mattresses going to landfill every year. I still can't believe that every time I say it. Bounce Back Recycling are, addressing 20,000 of that. They're looking to get to 100,000. So the potential is huge and significant. That's just mattresses. We think about furniture. There's so many various different elements in society where circular economy projects, social enterprise models can take those materials, can create a business around it, and also address a social issue. So it's a really exciting time, I think, and they're just one of a huge number of social enterprise or circular economy projects in Ireland today.
They're absolutely brilliant. I've been down to see them myself, and it's a fantastic organisation.
And they also do the warmer homes scheme, so they do retrofitting as part of it. That's what they started out with before they introduced Bounce Back. And we were listening to Martin Ward, who's their CEO, recently. Both Dawn and I were on a talk with him, and we were listening to him. The money that they earned last year would pipe back into putting 24, assisting 24 travellers get into third level education, and it has been really successful, and so many of those have gone on to further that basic third level education. So it's the social impact of the money that's earned through the social enterprise and the circular economy, the benefits of that. There's just no end to what can be done with the money when it's not for profit.
I think what's really great about the whole social enterprise sector and the complementarity of the circular economy is the fact that it's a common sense approach. We've got lots of social issues that can be resolved, or not necessarily resolved, obviously, because they're quite challenging, but that can be eased. Whether it's around housing issues, employment in many cases, social exclusion in other ways, and then also that circular economy piece plus the environmental issue. And I think when we join the dots, things start to really happen, and the change in progress is phenomenal. So I suppose, we mentioned earlier on, and I asked Dawn for the example of Bounce Back, CRNI, what's that about? Obviously it's a network of organisations, social enterprises, so what's the network about?
Well, it's a network of organisation of social enterprises, as you said, but they have a particular mission, and that mission is addressing what is now known as the circular economy. We got together over 10 years ago and have been, trying to promote circularity without really having the language maybe at the time. And a lot of the businesses or the social enterprises at that stage, and that's not that long ago, were involved in recycling. And it's only in the intervening 10 years that we see the number of reuse and repair organisations far outweigh the number of recycling organisations that are in the network. At the minute we've 41 organisations spread all over the country, and some in Northern Ireland as well. And they're some of the best in practice in terms of the industry, in terms of managing, we won't call it waste, managing resources, we'll say. Best in industry at that. You just look at what's going on here in the Rediscovery Centre. I let Sarah kind of toot her own horn, but it's just phenomenal. You're looking at paint, furniture, bicycles, textiles. They are kind of the four linchpins of the resource management at the minute. And there's electronics. We're my own that I kind of fell into the circular economy with was through Recycle It, and that looks at managing end-of-life electronics and electrical equipment, and Rehab Do It. So we have an organisation in Waterford, Renew, who look at repairing wheelchairs. So niche, but so, when you think about it, absolutely there has to be some place where you can get your wheelchair repaired. And they also look at bicycles and lawnmowers. So there's that kind of, the skills that are required to repair a wheelchair are so transferable. It's not that it's terribly specialised. So it's really interesting. So you have such a breadth. You have the bicycle repairs. They have just gone from strength to strength. The number of members we have now that's repairing bicycles and reusing bicycles, and they've moved into electric bicycles. Actually, there's been some funding lately which has focused on social enterprise and engaging them to increase their offering in terms of bike repairs, second-hand bikes, and also they included with great foresight in looking at electric bikes. So you have those Galway, there's movement in Galway, Cork. All the regions have these state-of-the-art social enterprises that are engaged in this space. So it's well worth, the audience getting out and having a look, having a search, get onto our website. All the members are there. It's, it's really phenomenal work that's going on.
It does sound phenomenal. A nice one. Well done on Sierra and I. And I think, this conversation is happening at a time when COP26 is in full swing, and I think we've moved beyond trying to prevent harm to the environment. We're now having to undo that harm as rapidly as possible. And I think, with the circular economy, it takes an individual to say, okay, well, look at, I'm getting rid of this bed, or I'm getting rid of this bike. Do I put it in a skip and it goes to landfill, or what responsibility do I have? So I suppose if you were to look to the future a wee bit, like and I'll throw this out to all of you, and please feel free to give your responses, but what can we do better? What can the government do better to support the circular economy through social enterprises?
Yeah, so look, I think you're absolutely right. The first thing we need to do from a societal level is just think, so what am I going to do with this piece of furniture that I'm going to throw away? Or I need to purchase something new, where am I going to get it? And I think that's a fundamental shift. People, need to change. It's a behaviour change. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done in communicating across the entire society as to the benefits of working with reuse, repair, recycling. And so there's a lot that is being done, I think, from a governmental perspective. We do have the circular economy strategy now, which is great. We're going through legislative scrutiny at the moment for the circular economy bill. That will enable us to bring in targets for reuse. It will be enabling us to, make better strides in green public procurement. There's a lot of action in terms of what is happening. We were very lucky to be in receipt of that funding, which was a cross-departmental funding with the Department of Transport and the Department of Community and Rural Development. And that basically has provided funding for our bike reuse initiative, which is Rediscovery Cycling, to get us to be able to employ people on that programme, to put in place a really strong training programme so that we can develop the bike mechanics for the future who will be able to reuse, remanufacture, rebuild bicycles, but also look at that innovation side of it and look at how can we bring in electric bikes, how can we retrofit electric bikes, and also how can we make sure that the benefits and the policies that are put in place are suitable for everyone and that they are just. So if you think about things like the Bike to Work scheme, that's great if you've got a job. But if you don't have a job, then how do you get access to bikes at affordable prices? So that's one of the things that we're looking at through that funding, is how can we really make sure that the funding that is being provided is equitable across all society, I suppose. And I think that's a really important part of the circular economy, is that it is about a just transition to a sustainable society, or to low carbon living. We need to make sure that those people who are most affected by climate change are being supported, to make sure that whatever policies or legislation that is put in place, that it doesn't have a further negative impact on them.
Great, Sarah, you should have said that right at the COP26 one as well. That was an incredible statement. And I suppose from Rethink Ireland's point of view, you provide a huge amount of support to the social enterprise sector. I suppose, what do you see in terms of the supports that are needed for the social enterprise sector in the future, but then also, I suppose, that circular economy piece?
To build on Sarah's point, I think it's kind of right time for social enterprise now, in my opinion. There's been huge work done in terms of getting the right legislation in place. We're hearing a lot of targets now being set for 2030. And to Sarah's point, that mindset shift amongst the general public is probably now starting to happen and manifest a lot more. The question I find myself asking then is, so who are the organisations that are going to support you in Ballymun, Belmullet, County Kerry, wherever it might be, to say, I've got a bike, I've got furniture, I want this to be diverted from landfill. I want this to go to organisations that are upcycling that are, I suppose, pumping it back into the economy and back into homes and not directly to landfill. So obviously at Rethink Ireland we provide funding and supports to the best social innovations or the best circular economy projects or social enterprises. Provide the cash, but it's the capacity building that's kind of the key point that I would make, because someone has an idea, that idea needs to be fostered. You need to provide adequate funding to get it up and off the ground. That needs to get to 5 or 10 people. Then it, like any other business, it needs support. It needs cash grants, investments, vouchers, whatever we want to call them, to get to the next stage of scale. And that's a cycle that continues. We spoke earlier about priming the pump and ensuring that there's a ready flow of, in this instance, social enterprises that are social economy, or rather not social economy, but circular economy projects, to ensure that we've got businesses across Ireland that can support the economy, support the circularity, I suppose, in terms of where we're going. So it becomes a national conversation, but there's national solutions across all of the communities that we all live in, that we're all moving towards the same place. We're moving towards the same targets. And it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah.
We've got to continue to support and back those projects, those businesses. I think social enterprises are amazingly placed because we're talking about an environment for all. And social enterprises are primarily looking at, well, we want to solve those solutions, but we also want to support people where there are social issues. We spoke about bounce back recycling. There's an added special nature to social enterprises that I think leaves them perfectly placed to tackle the issues and the targets that we're setting, but we need to support those network of organisations to flourish and grow, to grow in the size and number, for people to understand exactly what they are, and support them and buy from them, because fundamentally they're selling products or services like any other business, but we as a public need to support those.
Yeah. I think maybe just jumping in there, if you think about environmental policy, there's a very strong push towards proximity principles. So we should be managing our problems, our environmental issues, where they are created. And for so long we haven't been doing that in Ireland. We're very happy to export a lot of our waste to other countries so that they can deal with it. And I think social enterprises are so well placed because they are in the communities. They are based, in the location where you can actually set up these really successful programs which have really strong social and environmental benefits, but also mean that we as society take responsibility for the problems that we are generating. So I think we're so well placed to be able to solve those problems and to be able to work together to come up with solutions. And Sarah and I have been doing this for years. It's a really strong network. We all work really closely together. And from that, we're supported through the Environmental Protection Agency, and indeed the Rediscovery Centre has a strategic partnership with the EPA. And that funding enables us to work together, to grow the network, to be able to scale as well. So 2 years ago, we set up the Circular Economy Academy, that's funded by the EPA. And we're working with other communities throughout Ireland to help them to set up initiatives like ours. So we have many paint reuse initiatives now being set up all over the country, but there are a number of really innovative circular economy projects where we work with them, mentor them, provide them with business support to get them to the next stage of actually setting up their social enterprises. And if we can continue to grow that's how we get scale throughout Ireland. We have all of these programs that are, bottom up, being supported by the government to deliver on the environmental issues. What we'd really like to see is a community services programme specifically targeted at climate action projects. I think that would be so successful in terms of growing social enterprise in Ireland and providing those solutions that we really need for to tackle climate breakdown. I think that would be really important. We've seen how successful it has been with the bike initiatives. If we could have that across the board, where strong social enterprises can apply for funding, where we know they're going to have a positive impact on the environment, I think you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck if that was put in place.
Absolutely, yeah, but it sounds doable.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
The model's
And
there.
it's just
not-
expanding on a model that's already there. I mean, most of the members of our network have been very fortunate to be in receipt of funding from the Department of Rural and Community Development through PUBL, and that's the Community Services Programme. You just mentioned it there. I mean, we consider that the kind of platinum standard in terms of supporting social enterprise. We just concluded a European series of workshops that I've been part of through PUBL, and the partners, which were Germany, Sweden and Spain, are recognising that Ireland is so far ahead. It took us being on that workshop to kind of realise how supported the social enterprise sector is in Ireland, and in particular the circular economy sector, because through CRNI we have managed to, I suppose, promote enterprises onto the CSP programme. You know, they had to do their own business plans, etc., etc. But the door was cranked open there through the network, and they've been very fortunate to receive additional funding. So we're there. We have the model. It's just expanding it for what is such a sector in growth, and that's, in terms of the social impact, a sector in growth means that there's going to be so many more jobs, and we're in the position to create gainful employment for. Most of us are funded under the Community Services Programme to actually work with people from disadvantaged areas or people who've been marginalised or distanced from the workplace. So all this circular activity is on the back of that funding. Yeah. So it's not targeted as circular activity funding. Yeah. It's targeted very much at not so much labour activation, but getting people back into gainful employment and getting them training and experience. And sometimes it's just people who have maybe never been in work. You know, you have generations. We're working in areas where there's generational unemployment. And I find it myself, you know, I've been told to back off. Some of the younger men that we've working for us, will you stop trying to get them into training programs? You know, they're the only person in their friend group that's actually have a full-time job. You know, and that in terms of creating role models in the communities that these people are living in, I mean, it's so empowering. It really is. And that's social enterprise. And that, I suppose, the circular economy is almost accidental sometimes. Our main job is to be there and create these opportunities for people to come back, engage in the workplace. And through that, this circular productivity has been generated. It's amazing bang for the buck, shall we say, because the flexibility of social enterprises is phenomenal. You know, we must be the leanest small to medium enterprises in the country.
We have to
but
be.
The value, the
for
value
sure.
that's generated for the investment that's put in is phenomenal.
I think it's really interesting the kind of words and language that you've all used throughout this conversation. You know, targets, the support, the model is there, it's working. We need to expand it. You know, there is that support, you know, from the like of Rethink Ireland and other organisations. You know, and the CSP, the Community Services Programme, is essential. You know, I call it the gold standard. That's what we're all aiming to get. And having that financial support from the government is really important. But then also on the other side, there is that piece you mentioned earlier around green public procurement and then social procurement. So there is that, you know, the financial support in terms of helping the social enterprise be sustainable, because in many cases, you know, it's very difficult to be 100% self-sustaining. But then there's also the side where these circular economy social enterprises need to be part of a supply chain. Simple as, you know. And I know, like, if we go back to the bounce back recycling example earlier on, I'm really pleased that, you know, through the work that I do with the Department of Justice and the Working to Change strategy, we have a target. We have a target within that strategy that 10% of all of the department and prison and probation service contracts will have some form of green public procurement or socially responsible public procurement within it. And we're doing that. And it's a common sense approach, I suppose, in a way, because bounce back recycling and eco mattress recycling based here in Dublin and Glasnevin were successful recently in tendering for a contract that the prison service put out for the recycling or reuse of all of their prison mattresses, which prior to that had gone to buried landfill. So the prison service are getting the same outcome, no environmental impact, which in itself is a major plus. but that's also created 4 full-time jobs for people who have come through the criminal justice sector, who, as you're saying, you know, is like they're most marginalised from the labour market. So it's a win-win-win with the same, and actually, in fact, probably a cost saving to the prison service.
Yep.
So where's your thinking around socially responsible public procurement, I suppose, and the benefit that can have for circular economy, social enterprises? Do we need to do more? Do we need to have a look at things differently?
Well, I think even before we go to that point, you know, you just talked about how you're saving money there. That's saving money before we even take into consideration the cost to the environment. Yes. So if you think of, if we were to actually cost those tons of carbon that are being, you know, released as a result of non-circular economy initiatives, if we were to cost that, you're going to be saving lots of money, you know. So I think that's something we need to start thinking about. How do we cost the positive environmental impact of social enterprises as well? And maybe that's something we need to bring into the procurement process. And I think if you do that, then the competition then becomes a little bit more balanced. And I suppose that's what we've always struggled with. It's a little bit of, you know, when you put something out to procurement, in the past it might be, what's the lowest cost? So how can we get this at the lowest cost? And maybe it's the lowest cost, you know, as long as there's no detrimental environmental impact. But if we can start to cost, and that's very hard, I suppose, for social enterprises to compete with. So if you are running a social enterprise like our Rediscover Furniture, for example, and you are upcycling, repairing furniture and putting it on the market, of course that's, you know, there's a cost involved with that. There's a cost of materials and there's a cost of labour. And then if you compare that to maybe something that you can buy off the shelf, now maybe not as good quality as you might get in the Rediscovery Centre, but you're buying something off the shelf, you know, it's going to be cheaper because you haven't counted in that environmental impact of not sending it to landfill, of not exporting it overseas for incineration. You know, we need to balance that out a little bit. And I think once that happens, then the competition will be very fair. Yes. But at the moment, what is needed is we need to put in clauses that actually identify social benefit, be that the environment or the people that we work with or communities that we work with. And that's happening, you know, there are really good public procurement process and green public procurement in place, but we're just at the start of that now. You know, we have a long way to go. And I think, as Owen said, the timing is perfect. You know, everyone is concerned about climate breakdown. People know we have to work in a different way. And I think through green public procurement, we can do that. It's just, it has to happen a little bit quicker, maybe, for some of the social enterprises to get to benefit from it.
So for those social enterprises, I suppose, that are registered and attending now, how do they get involved in the circular economy piece? You know, I mean, obviously you've got the network, but if they're kind of looking at this and going, oh, actually there are opportunities in our local area, whether it's urban, rural, how do they get involved? You know, is it just, do you register for membership for CRNI?
Of course, you can get onto the website crni.ie, and there's a page there you can log into to request to become a member. And if you're a social enterprise, you are very, very welcome. The more the merrier. You know, we can't have enough of you. And I'm going to throw it back to Sarah, because they have an academy. So we may get emerging kind of social entrepreneurs or quite fledgling social enterprises, or even not so fledgling, you know, who want to kind of expand their offering. And the academy that Sarah runs has kind of expanded our membership base quite significantly, and developed, as she was mentioning, the paint organisations around the country, and the recycling of bike organisations around the country. So it's been really effective. And I can't leave this conversation without mentioning the Irish Charity Shops Association. You know, sometimes people might get the impression that we're talking about something kind of very highfalutin or kind of elitist, almost very niche, but every village in the country has a charity shop. Every single village. It's, I suppose, one of the, we haven't as many post office, I don't think, as we have charity shops. Yeah. So it has tentacles everywhere. Social enterprise, people are going into charity shops, they don't realise they're actually engaging in social enterprise every time they go in there. And the social impacts back to those charities is phenomenal. You know, they couldn't survive without the charity shops. And the people that divert what would have been waste into them. So their books, their textiles, their curtains, the furniture, you name it, you know, the bric-a-brac, that's all going it's instead of being wasted, it's all being reused with minimum intervention. And often that's, I suppose, one of the key things with circular economy. A lot of the time, actually, intervention is not needed.
Yeah. And even on the charity sector, I suppose it's interesting to look at how that has changed over in recent years. And, you know, we're seeing a lot of charity organisations becoming more involved in social enterprise programmes to deal with materials beyond the charity shop. So, for example, we're working with Roscommon Women's Network, and they have a charity shop, but what they're doing is with the textile waste, they actually have set up a whole new social enterprise around that called Cycle Up, and they have, I don't know how many women now, I think they probably have about 20 to 30 women working with discarded textiles, making beautiful products, but also, you know, they're being provided with really great skills. They're all becoming, you know, qualified dressmakers. Some of them are teaching other people now how to sew. They've set up a whole new social enterprise, and those women, you know, are coming from long-term unemployment or from, you know, a difficult place, and they're getting this support through their community in their own village, which is just, you know, it's great. They don't even have to travel to it. It's there for them, supporting them, and you know, protecting the environment as well. So it's another win-win.
There's such really good stories. I could listen to them all day, but unfortunately we don't have all day. So I suppose my final throw-out statement question to you all is, what's your vision for the social enterprise stroke circular economy for the next 5 years? Like, how would you like to see it develop? How would you like to see it grow? I've heard, and this has been hugely interesting to me, just how it has the potential to flourish. It's right on the cusp of flourishing. You know, we've got the infrastructure there to support that through the likes of Rethink, through the Academy, through CRNI. What's the future? What's your vision? Where would you like to see it go? Blue skies thinking, guys.
I could start there.
Yeah, work away on, yeah.
For me, I'd love social economy to be spoken in the same sentence as the wider economy in Ireland. There are amazing European examples where the data points are very well defined and people understand the percentage that the social economy contributes to GDP, or how many million people are employed, or how many thousands of social enterprises that there are. We've spoken about, and lots of amazing examples of social enterprises, but we don't fully know what the size of that is in Ireland, and I think that's really important. And the social enterprise policy is going to do that in its final year, and I think that's an amazing step forward. We've also spoken about raising awareness. That is key. Because Sarah, to your point, if and when we do get to that point where we have percentage targets in terms of social procurement, we need organisations that are ready to step up. I mean, we think about the number of SMEs that are in Ireland. I think it's around 300,000. I would love for us to be able to say that there are 30,000 social enterprises in Ireland. That's a real tangible figure. It's that kind of 10% that we all seem to stumble around, but I think it is a very real target that we could work towards. And then the key thing to get to that point, I think, is building capacity of social enterprise. We've kind of touched on it, I think, across a multitude of the questions. And there are a number of organisations that are providing supports, be it funding or capacity building. At Rethink, we're the same. We provide both, but I think a clarity of the picture for a fledgling social enterprise, to understand, where do I start? Where do I get my first 10,000 that gets me up and running? Where can I potentially go and get my next 50,000? And then social finance, or the bigger pots of grant finance in terms of your quarters of a million, if you're looking to scale up across Ireland, is really important for people so that they can self-identify and say, I'm going to go on this journey, it's really exciting. I think that's one of the things that we would hear. I mean, I've read probably over 800 applications from social enterprises in the last few years. We supported over 100, but the messages are the same. We didn't know where to go. We stumbled across your application. I would have loved to have known of X. So capacity building isn't just supporting the organisations that come to your door, but it's also changing the general population and the mindset that people readily identify that social enterprises is part of this bigger vision for the environment, but also the social enterprises that we're trying to tackle. That's what's so exciting about it, because it is that sweet spot. But the problem is, and I hear this time and time again from social enterprises, I spend all my time trying to describe who we are and what we do. And I think if we can get to a point where the general population are like, I know what a social enterprise is, I think that's huge. And then if we have the right support structures in place, it means that we can confidently go into those procurement targets and say, we're ready.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've been hearing targets the last couple of weeks in terms of, you know, tens of billions. Like, the potential is huge and significant, but joined up policy across the governments, and I suppose the organisations that can step up to the mark is really important as well. So it's looking at it holistically, but very exciting times, and certainly one that I think, to take inspiration from the IKEA mannequin in the background there, I would love for us to be able to say social enterprise, to take their, you know, branding in terms of the wonderful everyday. It is part of the wonderful everyday of our society, and everyone sees that. We're all going to social enterprises, we're plugging into the system, we're reusing as part of a wider economy. I think that's a very exciting prospect, and it's just a case of joining the dots.
Oh, so well said. Thank you very much for that. Anybody else, would you want to come in there? So what's your vision?
It's hard to follow that. It's very inspirational. I guess, look, what I'd really like to see is that social enterprise and circular economy go hand in hand, because they do naturally. And I think if we can work together, I think collaboration is really important here. We are seeing these organisations, very similar organisations across the country. So we have a network of paint reuse organisations. We have a network of bicycle reuse and recycling organisations. We have a number of, you know, electronic recycling organisations. They're all there. There's no reason why we can't deliver on public procurement when we work together. So I think that's something that I'd really like to see, is that we're all working together to deliver public services. I'd also like to think that, you know, it's just seen as good business. We don't always, you know, we are businesses at the end of the day. You know, we have to operate the same as everyone else. We have to pay our bills, we have to pay our insurance, we have to pay our staff. So we are businesses, we just have, you know, maybe a different focus. We want to be in it for the right reasons. And so I'd like for social enterprises to be spoken about as businesses, alongside other businesses, supported like other businesses through the LEOs and through Enterprise Ireland, and that we're all part of the same ecosystem that is working together for a better environment that supports all of our people.
Wow. My God. No, sorry now. It's over to you for the last one.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, I mean, sometimes, and there is this perception that social enterprise is like soft enterprise. And it's the complete and utter opposite, Siobhan, because we're like social enterprise. We're small to medium enterprise plus. We're so much bigger than enterprise, because we're taking people who have maybe been unskilled or have literacy issues or come from, you know, whatever the background is. We're bringing them into a workplace that is as productive, and has to be, because you have to earn income. So it's as productive as any enterprise in the country. If I went back to the lads that have working with me and said, you know, you're not working as hard as if you were in private, they would, they go through me, because they're the hardest working, staff I have ever worked with.
I think, you know, this has been a huge privilege to sit with you guys and to hear, you know, you talk about social enterprise. We're all so passionate about it. I love that we have that passion, you know, in the circular economy. It makes sense. And I suppose one of the things that I'll take from today, and hopefully everybody else will, is that there's lots happening. This is already happening.
It's a good time.
It's a good time.
Yeah.
It is a good time. We're coming to the last year of our National Social Enterprise Policy. We're going to make it the best one yet. There's lots of really, really positive things happening. We need to look ahead for those opportunities. The fact that we've got the Circular Economy Academy, we've got the support from the network, the likes of Rethink Ireland. I think 2022 is looking to be a very bright year. So thank you for your time. That was really, really brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Siobhan.
It's great.